Hey everybody, welcome to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, visionrecordingstudios.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And today I want to do a video to give you the 2015 plugin wrap-up video. Last year I did one at the end of 2014, kind of talked to you guys about what plugins I purchased throughout the year, which ones I liked, which ones I thought were maybe hit or miss, and then what my plans are going forward for the next year as far as plugins go. And so I wanted to do the same thing this year. I've had a few people ask me about when is the plugin wrap-up video coming, so here it is. So there was about a dozen plugins or so this year I purchased, primarily mostly Universal Audio stuff, along with some Waves plugins as well. I've kind of determined over the last couple of years, and especially in 2015, that I'm pretty much going to focus in on only a couple of different plugin manufacturers as I move forward. Just like you guys, you know, it's always nice to get new plugins. It's always cool to get new stuff. And I fall victim to what everyone I'm sure watching this falls victim to, is you end up buying all these plugins throughout the year, especially during the Black Friday sale between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And you buy a ton of plugins at a great price. And then you end up going to only a handful of plugins that you use in all your projects. You always have your go-to plugins, and I have those as well. And all these other ones that you buy, you try them, and a lot of times they just sit and you forget you even have them. And so what I'm real happy to report this year is during the Thanksgiving to Christmas holiday, I didn't buy a single plugin this year. Not a single plugin that went on sale I didn't buy, not one, where I can't say that in 2014, and I don't plan to buy any more going forward. And I'll talk about that at the end of this video. So let's talk about what did I get this year. So starting with Universal Audio, the very first plugin I picked up this year was the new Neve 88RS channel strip. This was a new and improved update from the old Neve channel strip, part of the Universal Audio platform. Love this channel strip. If you've watched any of my Made Easy products or any of my YouTube videos, you'll see I use this channel strip an awful lot. It's got great character, great vibe. It's a huge improvement to the old 88RS. The new 88RS, where they actually modeled the preamp section coming into the console, as well as the fader, the physical fader and the sound characteristics of that circuitry, which it makes it a more true representation of the old Neve 88 physical hardware console, where the old 88RS plugin only really modeled the compressor, the gate, and the EQ, not the input and output section. And that was an old plugin back from maybe 2006, 2007, where the DSP technology just wasn't there to model the entire channel strip. But in 2015, it is, and they re-released this, and I picked it up, and it's a great, great plugin. Love the new Neve 88RS. So if you have Universal Audio as your system, be a good plugin to check out. The second plugin that I picked up this year, again, was another Universal Audio product. It was the Studer 800 multi-track tape machine, and this is a great plugin. Again, as far as tape machines go, I have a lot of different tape emulation plugins. I used to use the Slate VTM an awful lot, and I still use that from time to time, but the Studer 800 has a much different characteristic to it. As compared to something like the Slate or like the Kramer Master Tape by Waves, which is another one I picked up. It's got a more hyped low end and maybe even a more hyped top end, the Studer does. And it just sounds different. And I think I got that on sale and I picked it up, and I'm really happy that I did. It's a great plugin. The next plugin that I picked up this year, again, it was another Universal Audio product. It was the Friedman Guitar Amp Sim collection, which included the BE100 as well as the Dirty Shirley amplifier. Both of those plugins I did a review on. It's on the YouTube channel. You can check it out. Again, between Universal Audio and Brainworks modeling these two amplifiers, they sound almost identical to the actual hardware, actual real physical tube amps. And it's just amazing with the technology today how you can get a guitar amp sound in a plugin that sounds 98% of the real thing. It really does. And it's come a long way, the guitar amp simulator technology, over the last 3 or 4 years. 3 or 4 years ago, you can absolutely tell the difference between the plug-in and the real thing. It was obvious. It's convenient, it's great for doing demo work, but you would never really use it in a real professional track. Over the last couple of years, and especially this year with the Friedman collection as well as the Marshall bundle, which we'll talk about in a second, it is amazing how great it actually sounds. Where for when I'm doing session work for producing music for television and film, which is part of what I do, Some of you may know that, some of you may not know that. Instead of miking up real guitar cabinets, I'm using these plugins now by Universal Audio. I'm no longer miking up guitar cabinets to write music for visual stuff like television and film. I think it's that good and it sounds great. And I would highly recommend you check it out. If you're a Universal Audio user, go demo the product. You would really like it. Continuing on with the guitar amp simulation plugins. Again, the next Universal Audio plugin was the Marshall 1959 Super Lead Plexi. Again, another wonderful plugin. I mean, it's just amazing how much this sounds just like the real thing because it's modeled after the real thing. And so again, just like with the Friedman collection, if you're looking for a classic Marshall Plexi sound in a plug-in format, and there's many companies that make something that's supposed to emulate that, this is the best one I've heard. And again, it's just something I highly recommend you go check it out if you're a Universal Audio user. I also picked up by Universal Audio the Marshall Legends Bundle collection, which also includes the 1962 Blues Breaker along with the Silver Jubilee. And the Silver Jubilee is one of my favorites. The Blues Breaker is really cool too. The Blues Breaker, again, very, very true to the original Blues Breaker amp. But the Silver Jubilee, if you're looking for that kind of 80s hard rock sound, it nails it 100%. I have a JCM 800 from the 80s, and this is the Silver Jubilee, is kind of a souped up JCM 800. This sounds identical to it. When I heard it, I said, that's the sound. And so again, another great plugin. Next up, Universal Audio, the API Vision Channel Strip. Again, this is something new for me. Again, I picked this one up on sale early on in the year. And again, just like the Neve 88RS, I'm a huge proponent of mixing with channel strips and that analog vibe, as you well know. If you're watching this channel, you know that. And the API, I tend to lean towards the Neve. That's my kind of flavor. But I got to tell you, the API has a wonderful sound as well. Sounds a lot different than the Neve. So it's nice to have a couple of different flavors, if you will, or a couple of different tools in your toolbox as far as channel strips go, and the API Vision Channel Strip is a great addition. So that's the other plugin I picked up, and that was it for Universal Audio. I also picked up some Waves plugins this year. I picked up the Waves V-Comp, which is a Neve style emulation compressor. Very cool. It's a cool compressor. I used it a few times. I don't use it as much as some of my others, but I wanted to try it out. I think at the time I picked it up for like 29 bucks, so I said, oh, what the hell, let me give it a try. Great plugin, great compressor. If you don't have any analog bus compressors, so to speak, and you're maybe a stock plugin type of a person and you're starting to move into the third-party plugins, and you don't want to make the investment in the Universal Audio hardware, Waves makes some pretty good stuff, and the V-Comp is one of them. Good plugin. I've used it a lot on drum buses. I've used it on parallel compression for bass, really cool. But anything you put it on, it sounds really good. So check out the Waves V-Comp if you're looking to get into some Neve style compression. It's a good one to have. I also picked up the Waves CLA3A compressor. I also own the Universal Audio LA3A, and I got to tell you, I like the Waves CLA3A better. It's got a little more character to it, a little more mojo to it. Sounds much different than the Universal Audio version, and I think that's a great compressor. Again, if you don't have Universal Audio because you don't want to buy the hardware because you're not ready to make that kind of an investment financially, Waves makes a lot of great alternatives where you don't need the hardware. It's a native plugin, and the CL3A is really cool. I also picked up the Waves CLA76, which is the 1176 collection. And what's really cool about the 1176 collection is you not only get the blackface, but you also get the blue stripe all in one plugin. So you get two compressors in one single plugin, and the blackface and the blue face, they do sound completely different. The blackface is a little bit more round, a little bit more warm, a little bit more dark sounding, as opposed to the blue stripe, which is a little bit more brilliant on the top end. Two totally different sounds, and they both have, you know, their applications of use. So again, that's the CLA76, and when you pair that up with the CLA3A, now you have two 1176s and an LA3A in your collection at a very reasonable price, probably for less than $400. And you always can pick up the Wave stuff on sale. They're on sale an awful lot. So that might be something you want to consider. I also picked up the Waves Kramer Master Tape, primarily out of just curiosity. Again, that was another plugin I think I paid 20 bucks for at the time. And it's a tube-based tape machine emulation. And again, sounds different from the VTM by Slate and by the Ampex by Universal Audio. And again, if you check out my YouTube channel, I do a video where I compare 3 or 4 different types of tape machines on a master bus, and that's one of them. Sounds great, nice and warm and thick and fat, and that's because it's based on a tube-based tape machine. Again, worth checking out. If you don't have any tape emulation, I would say that's one to check out. It's really, really cool. I also picked up the Waves NLS, which is the non-linear summing plugin, which is kind of the competing plugin on the market as of the recording of this video would be the VCC by Slate Digital. Same kind of concept where they've emulated the input and output sections of a console. On the Waves NLS, I believe you have 4 different consoles, an SSL, a Neve, a Trident, and I think there's another one. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm not looking at it on the screen. I think there's 4. Or no, maybe there's 3. I think it's a Neve, an SSL, and a EMI. That's it. An SSL and even an EMI console, whereas the VCC has a few more consoles in it, but they don't do an EMI. So the difference between the two, again, I did a video, Waves NLS, I did a review video on that and kind of compared it to the VCC. They both sound really, really good. The one thing I like about the Waves NLS over something like the VCC is the Waves NLS, when they modeled a console, they just didn't model one channel. So for example, on the VCC, if you pull up the Neve console or the SSS console, they only modeled, say, one of the channels, say channel 1, for example, where they're getting the sound characteristics of one channel on that particular console. Where on the Waves NLS, they modeled every channel on the console, and when you put them across all your different tracks, you can choose each channel that they modeled, and they all have a slight different variation in sound. So for example, if you had a kick, snare, tom track in your drums, in your mix, you'd put the NLS on all 3 channels, and on the kick you'd choose channel 1, on the snare you choose channel 2, and on the tom you choose channel 3. And now you have those 3 plugins across all 3 tracks, and they all have a little bit different of a sound characteristic, just like the real thing. That's the one thing about the Waves that I like over the VCC. They both sound a little different. I use both of them equally, probably lean towards the VCC a little bit more, but the Waves is a great plugin, and again, if you could get it on sale, you can get it very inexpensive. I highly recommend that if you're looking again to get into some more analog, mojo and vibing your mix. The NLS is a great plugin to have. And then the last 2 I picked up is I picked up the Waves Vocal Writer, which I did again another video on that, a review video. Awesome plugin for automating vocals and for doing vocal rides. Perfect plugin. Almost always will have to ride a vocal manually in a final mix down. This does it for you, and it does a really, really, really good job when used sparingly. And again, go check out my video on that, and I show you how I use it. It's been a lifesaver of time not having to ride that vocal manually. And you could do it on lead vocals, background vocals, so on and so forth. And they also make a bass rider, Waves does. I don't have that plugin, but they have the same kind of concept for bass, which is kind of cool. I'm gonna maybe check that out at one point. Don't know what the algorithm differences are between the vocal rider and the bass rider, but I'm sure they're similar in the way they operate, but they're picking up different frequencies and so on and so forth. So anyway, good plugin, a great plugin to check out, the Vocal Writer. And then lastly, I picked up the Waves Debreath. And that was one that I picked up again for like 10 bucks. And that is designed to be able to take the breaths out of the beginning of vocal phrases. So you know how a singer will sing a line, and then when they go to sing the next line, they have a breath that comes up. A lot of times vocalists, especially amateur singers that don't know how to work a mic very well, you'll get this big into the microphone, okay, before the phrase. And a lot of times what you'll do, and what I do, and what a lot of engineers do, is you'll go in and you'll either cut that breath out or you'll slice it and you'll fade it in so it sounds more natural. So you're not getting that big into the microphone before the next line. And this does that for you. I've played with it a little. I have a little bit of trouble getting it to be accurate. And at the end of the day, it's probably faster for me to do it manually. But I thought it was a cool idea, and for 10 bucks I picked it up, and it works okay. You could demo it. You may want to check that out. So those are the plugins that I purchased in 2015. All of them, for the most part, I use in almost every single production that I do, which is great. The only one I could say that I don't use all the time is I don't always use the Waves NLS because I'll use the VCC. And I don't use the deep breath, as I just spoke about, because it doesn't really work all that great in my opinion. Maybe I've had some trouble with it. I got to work with it a little bit more. But all the other plugins I picked up, I'm happy to say I'm using on a fairly regular basis, if not every single mix. And so those are the plugins I bought for 2015. Now going into 2016, as I said a little bit earlier, I'm kind of, turning over a new leaf. And one of the things I try to teach on this channel is, it's not the plugin that makes the mix sound good. It's the engineer that makes the mix sound good. And it's the recording engineer who tracked the artist that makes the mix sound good, much more so than what compressor you're using or what plugin you're using. So when we talk about stock plugins versus third-party plugins, the difference being is that they're two different tools and they sound different. One is not necessarily better than the other, they're just different. And so what I try to tell all my students, and if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you'll have heard me say this a million times. Learn how to work your stock plugins to their maximum potential first, before you start diving in and spending lots of money on third-party plugins, because these third-party vintage style plugins are not a magic bullet to make your mix sound great. If you can't get a well-balanced, somewhat polished sounding mix with stock plugins all by themselves, then you're never going to get it with vintage style plugins. Vintage style plugins and these analog plugins, it's a different type of tone. It's a different type of vibe, and it gives you that extra 10 or 15% on top of the mix once the mix is really happening, okay? So, but like I said earlier, we all fall victim into buying all these plugins, and half the time we don't end up using all the plugins that we have in our collection. I mean, I'm guilty of this as well. I have hundreds of different plugins, and I don't use 90% of them. And when I look back on it, I say, geez, what a waste of money a lot of that stuff was. And so what I'm saying going forward, and what I'm going to challenge all you to do, especially if you've been following me for a while, is whatever plugins you have starting on January 1st, 2016, stick with those plugins, whether it's stock plugins, whether it's vintage style plugins, even if you think you need 3 or 4 more others to your collection. If you have a decent, if you have a DAW, you have stock plugins. You have EQs, compressors, reverbs, and delays, right? EQs and compressors probably being the most important, okay? If you already have one third-party EQ and one third-party compressor, stick with that. Don't buy anything else for the entire year. Get as good as you possibly can with the stock EQ and compressor and maybe one other EQ and compressor that maybe you bought as a third-party stuff. If you already have that, you have enough, and I have enough. If you don't have a tape emulator, maybe get yourself a tape emulation. But beyond that, I would say look at your plugin collection, pick your favorites, and say, this is what I'm going to stick with, and I'm going to learn these things inside and out before I go out and I buy any other plugins. And if I don't, the only reason why you should be buying another plugin is if it does something that your current plugins don't currently do. Then I would say go out and maybe buy that plugin if it's a specific tool you feel you need that you don't already have. And you have to be honest with yourself. If you're looking for a certain tool and you find a plugin that comes along that says that'll do something that my current lineup doesn't do, then I would say go ahead and make that investment. But if it doesn't, and you've already have something that's similar or does somewhat of the same thing, but maybe you're a little frustrated because you couldn't get that plugin to work properly, I would say get out the manual, read the manual front to back, play with the plugin until you get it to do what you want it to do. And only buy a new plugin if you do not have that specific tool in your toolbox. That's my commitment. And what I'm going to do is I'm only going to focus on 2 plugin companies for the rest of 2016. I am going to use just Universal Audio and Slate Digital. I already own all those plugins. those are the plugins I turn to the most, and those are the plugins I'm going to stick with, and I'm going to make sure that I maximize that before I go out and buy anything else. I'm not going to go out and buy anything else. My goal in 2016 is to buy no other plugins from this point forward. As a matter of fact, I'm almost ready to delete some of the other plugins off my hard drive, the ones that I forgot I even had. Probably thousands of dollars worth of plugins that I don't even use. And again, we all fall into this, right? We all have 50 EQs, 50 compressors, 6 different tape machines. And do you really need that? No, you don't really need that. So I'm going to lead by example. I'm not buying any other plugins. You will not see me do any more plugin reviews from in 2016 that are not plugins I already currently own. And I'm only going to show you the stuff that I use every single day, which again, primarily is Universal Audio and Slate Digital. Now, if either one of those companies release something this year that is totally something I can use and my current lineup doesn't have it, then maybe I'll think about buying it. But other than that, that's my commitment to myself and my commitment to you. And think about your plugins and think about as you move forward, maybe you dial back some of that spending and use that money on something that really makes a difference in your studio. Maybe it's a better microphone. Maybe it's acoustic treatment for your room. If you don't have acoustic treatment, but you got $1 million worth of plugins, you're thinking about things the wrong way. Maybe you want to upgrade your speakers, your monitors, or your headphones, or whatever. Try to put that money to better use as opposed to buying a new plugin just because it looks cool and it's fancy looking and all that other stuff. So anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox. So again, thanks for watching. This is my 2015 plugin wrap-up. Let me know in the comments below what plugins you got in 2015 and which ones do you like, and what are you going to do in 2016? Are you going to stick to this kind of challenge that I'm throwing out to all of us, or are you going to just keep buying and spending more money? And whatever you do, hey, that's cool. Whatever it is to make you happy and make better music in your home studio, I support that. So until next time, this has been David with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. Head out to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com and check out the Made Easy series, the Quick Mix series, and my blog, and all my training things that are not part of YouTube. There's a ton of free content out at HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com that you won't see on YouTube. And if you sign up for the VIP email newsletter, you're going to get a bunch of free stuff and a bunch of discount coupons and a whole bunch of goodies that you won't see on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else. So head out to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, do that. And until next time, I will see you soon. Take care.